The mayor and the governor have come out in favor of congestion pricing, and allergy sufferers are up in arms. I'm sorry. It's okay. The mayor and the governor have come out in favor of congestion pricing, and Long Island commuters are up in arms. Their plan would be to impose a toll on cars entering the central business district, which will be defined as all of Manhattan below 61st Street. Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio say this is necessary to provide a sustained funding stream to fix the MTA, but the Senate Majority Leader is opposed to the plan. To help us make sense of it all, we're joined by our all things New York City politics resident expert, Jarrett Murphy, publisher of City Limits. Jarrett, nice to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me a little bit about this plan. First of all, it's remarkable that de Blasio and Cuomo are agreeing on anything. And actually, de Blasio, I think, remarked on that.
Yes, it is remarkable. It's also something that they definitely disagreed on for the past 18 months. You know, when the subway crisis struck 2017, Cuomo instantly went to congestion pricing. De Blasio has been pushing this let's tax the millionaires scheme and been really resistant to congestion pricing for a long time. He's softened a little bit, and now he's come full circle. So on Amazon and now on this, they're best buddies.
So what brought de Blasio around?
Well, I think the recognition that the millionaires tax simply wasn't going to happen. You know, there's this concern in the state now about people who are wealthy leaving. They don't know if that's true or not. That's what Cuomo has said. Concern about the SALT deduction changes at the federal level, making it already tougher for rich people to live here. And, you know, we hope that they're going to be okay. It's rough.
Let's
keep them in our
hopes
thoughts.
And prayers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. But also I think he is conscious of the fact that, you know, the major obstacle to him getting things done in his first 5 years in office were Republican-controlled Senate and a governor who hated him, and they hated each other. And the Senate has changed, and I think he's trying to change the second thing and finding ways where that can occur.
So Bloomberg about 10 years ago proposed congestion pricing, and it didn't go great. What is different about this plan, and what has changed since then?
The plan is slightly different, but I think more importantly, two things. The political context is totally different. When Bloomberg put that plan forward, there was no sense of crisis in the MTA. In fact, Bloomberg's pitch was largely around traffic being a big problem and air quality being a concern. And those were valid, but there wasn't a real sense of crisis around either of those. Now it's different. Now we know there is a huge problem with the transit system. Everyone feels it.
So it's not really like congestion is a problem. It's like the MTA is a problem. We need to find a way to pay for it. Hey, let's revisit congestion
And wouldn't
pricing.
it be nice to fix congestion too? So the congestion is like the byproduct. The transit is the main focus of the policy.
So let's talk about that congestion. Who drives in Manhattan?
Foolish people. I think
Is it all commercial? Is it all like delivery?
No, there are regular commuters who go to their jobs that way, people who go in and out for doctor's appointments and things. A lot of people go through Manhattan because of the oddity of the tolls on some bridges and not tolls on others. Some people find the cheapest path to go, say, from Brooklyn to New Jersey is to take a free bridge into Manhattan and then go across through a tunnel or something because you save a toll that way. So it can be a lot of different people. They are generally more wealthy than subway riders, but some people are relatively modest means. It's a relatively small number of commuters that do it every day, but it's a large number because everything in New York is large.
Mm-hmm. So as you mentioned, currently some of the tunnels and bridges have tolls and some don't. So already most Jersey commuters who come into the city are paying to enter the central business district, right? Do we have a sense of like what percentage of people who come into Manhattan already are paying some type of toll?
That's a good question. I suspect it's a substantial percentage, but not a majority. What's interesting is I believe the plan that has been written, and again, this is not the plan that's been passed because nothing's been passed yet, would credit people who pay that toll. They would not have to pay an additional toll. So in other words, if you pay $5 to come over a bridge and the congestion charge is $5, then you're all set. They're not going to charge you twice.
Oh, I see. And so have they discussed yet how this toll is going to be implemented exactly, or is that all going to be discovered later?
So as you mentioned, it's the Central Business District, or CBD, as I think we'll begin calling it. That's what the cool kids will say, below 61st Street in Manhattan. Doesn't include the FDR Drive.
How does the hemp community feel about this acronym?
I'm not sure.
I think this is going to be confusing.
They're
on our
hungry.
show, we talk a lot about CBD, and people won't know what we're talking
They'll
about.
wonder, they'll be worried about that. And I think it's going to be all about, Cuomo's all about the cashless tolling. We've seen that imposed on an increasing number of roadways in the city and the state. And so this will be cashless tolling. So not booths. It'll be a perimeter. You'll go through. You won't notice it except on your credit card statement.
So are there any exemptions to this plan?
They're talking about exemptions for obviously emergency vehicles, which makes sense, and people who have a disability or some significant hardship. That's how the mayor and governor phrased it in their 10-point plan. Now, that's not been defined. I have a feeling a lot of devils will be in those details, but I imagine it would be people who have a disability or need to drive their parents somewhere. And I think there'd be a question about whether one gets sort of a occasional exemption versus like a permanent one. But all that will have to be worked out.
So I can sort of see three different groups who might have issues with this. Commuters, commercial vehicles, delivery vehicles, and also taxis and rideshare companies. So maybe let's start with the last one. Lyft and Uber are actually in favor of congestion pricing. Is that right?
I think so. Well, partly because there's already a system going into place, I believe, affecting those cars. That was put into law even earlier.
And I think they're fighting that currently.
Yeah, there is a lawsuit that. It will affect all those groups. I think that the case that we made to them is that it might make their lives easier in the sense of getting other traffic off the roads. I mean, that'll be the grand bargain is if you drive a commercial vehicle, you have to pay some extra money to get in, but you're going to do it, 20 minutes faster. Maybe that's worth it to you in terms of paying for people and paying for gas and all that stuff. I think that would be the argument of pro-congestion pricing people. Whether it materializes or not depends on how the implementation goes.
And they'll also try to divert delivery vehicles to off-peak hours, right? Because it'll depend on the time that you enter the center.
Right. Variable pricing is a big part of this, and that's really what makes it a congestion pricing scheme. Otherwise it's just a toll. But if you move it according to time of day and maybe even vary it according to volume of traffic, which they haven't exactly talked about, then you can try to get people who can switch their time of delivery to the non-peak hours to come in then. And then that has a lot of benefits. It means the roads are being used more efficiently all the time. That's the theory behind congestion pricing that William Vickers won the Nobel Prize for like 25 years ago. The idea that you could price it exactly according to when demand is highest and lowest.
Somebody won a Nobel Prize for congestion pricing?
They did.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so the plan is already facing some opposition. Andrea Stewart-Cousins, she's the new Senate Majority Leader, says that this plan disproportionately impacts Long Islanders, and we'll need to see some changes made before she and the representatives from Long Island can support this. Is that right?
She has a job of keeping the Senate majority together. These 40 Democrats elected, but representing a lot of different places and a lot of different ideologies. I think she's responding to some complaints from the Long Island contingent about the fact that their people who drive into the city would be affected by the toll, but wouldn't benefit from the congestion pricing money going into the MTA to improve transit. Todd Kaminsky, who's kind of the leader of the Long Island caucus, if you will, it's not officially called that within the Democratic majority, has said that he wants some of the money set aside for the LIRR. That's going to be a problem because already the math is not especially favorable. I mean, congestion pricing will help a lot, but it's not going to solve the MTA's subway repair woes. And I think what advocates would say is, look, almost everyone who rides the LIRR ends up on a subway train at some point, so they have a built-in reason to support the subway improvements. LIRR doesn't have anywhere near the service and maintenance issues that the subways do. So I don't know if that argument's going to really prevail. I suspect there'll have to be some nod made because people want to maintain Democratic unity, but I don't know if it's going to be a major stumbling block.
So how much is this going to help? How much money will this raise to help fix the MTA?
Well, the estimates have been all over the map. It's several $1 billion. But I think what's interesting about the mayor and governor's plan is that they explicitly say we also want to throw in a portion of internet sales tax money, this new tax they're going to impose, and some money on legalized marijuana, some percentage of the tax revenue from that. That's an indication that already they understand that this money from congestion pricing is not going to be enough to fix the problems the MTA has right now, and then at some point, once those problems are solved, which won't be in our lifetimes, presumably, continue to do the regular maintenance and fund the improvements that the system's supposed to have. What's interesting about that is the marijuana tax money has already been controversial in terms of where that's supposed to go. Does it go to fix transit? Does it go to do something else? Does it go to help communities that were primarily affected by onerous marijuana enforcement?
Right.
So there's a little fight in there that could get very interesting.
Everyone wants a piece of the weed money.
Absolutely.
If this doesn't pass, is there a viable plan B to fix the MTA, or is everybody putting their eggs in this basket now?
This is it. I mean, it really is. I think if this doesn't pass, it's going to be very, very difficult to gather the political will, or the idea is to find something else. It's not going to be enough to fix the problem, but I don't think the problem can be fixed without it. I think that's just simple math.
Now, one thing that you've written about and that has been suggested as a potential way to fill the coffers is parking. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the thinking around how we might want to start having people pay for parking in New York?
Well, so it's interesting we're talking about charging people for driving, but not for parking, right? Parking gives you basically, in much of the city, like 97% of the spaces, it's free.
That's a crazy statistic to me. I didn't realize that it was 97%.
It's something like that. In most neighborhoods, there is at least anecdotal evidence that it's getting harder to park. So I think people are talking about pricing parking in a way that makes parking more efficient. I don't know if it would generate that much money for the transit system, but I think there is a sense in which all of this works together, right? Transit depends on buses to a great degree. In much of the city that is poorly served by subways, buses are the way to go. Buses are how you're going to sell people on congestion pricing. But buses can't move if folks are double parking because there's no place to park on a commercial strip. And that might be because parking is priced so low, folks can hang out there for several hours when they don't need to. It's very, very sticky. We posted a story on it, and the comments we got were very negative and very personal, like, how dare you take our parking away?
Right.
So I think it's not
This is
something that
America.
folks... This is America, damn it. I think folks are going to be very trepidatious about stepping into that after congestion pricing, but almost certainly it's the way it's going to go. New York City is not getting physically larger. Our population is growing, and our car-owning population is also growing. And I'm not a mathematician, but that suggests that at some point that's going to be very, very difficult to manage.
Something that I read, I think, in an op-ed in the New York Times about permitting parking, about paying for residential permits to park your car, was that it might also be able to do away with alternate side street parking, and that you might be able to put some of this revenue back into developing some type of street cleaning system that didn't involve moving cars. Did you read this?
I didn't read that, but there are some neighborhoods that want that. A lot of cities have it. It gets tricky in New York with how you define different neighborhoods. There's always issues of privilege involved. But this ties back into congestion pricing. One of the fears about congestion pricing is because you are setting up these barriers that folks might drive to areas just outside the zone or reasonably outside the zone and start parking there. That was a big worry during the Bloomberg debate about congestion pricing. Whether it's viable now or not, whether those neighborhoods have any free parking spaces, I don't know. But there is a sense that if you are charging for parking, for driving in an area, the areas just outside it will become much, much more difficult to park in.
Sure. I'm sure that people who live on 62nd Street are a little nervous.
Yeah, I'm sure they're thrilled.
Yeah. Okay, Jarrett, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you.